Who knew that virtual worlds were gonna deliver results so quickly? Well, I did. I literally called it out in a video that I made previously. But now that my $50 deck profile is too expensive, it's time to pull the plug on virtual world. Hey guys, it's Tom Box. Welcome to MST.TV. Now, in this video, we're going to learn how to counter against Virtual World. Now, I didn't expect them to overthrow Dragon Links and invoke Dogmatica so soon, but they did. And they've taken most of the top spots. Why? My personal reasoning why is that, first of all, a lot of people were unprepared for this matchup. They didn't actually take it seriously, and well, they got punished for it. And overall, the matchup is kind of in an interesting position because of how the deck is played. They only rely on the bodies themselves, and everything activates in the hand, making most forms of negation without destruction absolutely worthless. So stuff like Veiler, Imperm, Droplets, they don't really work against the deck when they're building up their combo. This deck is a VFD making machine. It can manipulate ranks and levels as if it was going out of style. They can even casually dodge Nibiru. Yeah, that's right. They can just go into Gossip Shadow by the third summon and then just play the rest of the board normally. They're just so flexible. The deck is just not exactly predictable. The extra deck package skips the entire link part, which was why you can't just leave their stuff on board because they're already at the raw material of making these bosses. Now, on top of everything, after you burn all your resources trying to stop them, as long as you can make one Xyz monster and land one swing on you, prepare to get your whole board wiped by Azu's Sky Thunder. That's just what they have, and they can even do all of this stuff under a skill drain. And once they put the biggest monster under skill drain, simplified game state, they are likely going to win. And they have graveyard effects, Shen, and they can blow you out with their own little mini macrocosmos. Now, that doesn't mean that they're invincible, however. They do have a couple of key weaknesses that you have to constantly exploit, or else they're going to get the upper hand, and once they gain the upper hand, you can't really do too much against it. So how do you actually beat this deck? Aside from using key blowout cards and getting lucky by drawing these key blowout cards, you will probably need to use well-timed counters to prevent their board from being developed properly. Okay, first of all, we're going to talk about some cards that are less effective to complete garbage that you should not run and explain why they do not work against this matchup, just so that you can get a better understanding of this matchup. And then we'll go into some of the ones that are more effective and the properly timed cards that you can use against them. So if you guys want to see more videos like these ones, well, make sure you guys hit that like button, hit subscribe, and ding the notification bell. Fun fact, if you ding the notification bell, one of your opponents will get unplugged right away. So hit that button right now. And if you guys really want to support this channel, check out the Patreon link down in the description. Really helps me out, especially when I'm in the middle of a move right now. So yeah, thank you very much, guys, and let's get to it. Now, if you guys just want straight up counters and timing about how to beat this deck, just skip right on ahead to whatever timing that I've posted right here. And for those of us who want to get a better understanding about how the matchup works, why these cards are ineffective, why you should side these ones out, well then stick around for this part. So card number 1, Infinite Imperm. Card number 2, Triple Tactics Challenge. Card number 3, Drone Logbird. Cards number 4, we have the standard floodgates of there can be only one goes in rivalry, and even anti-spell. Floodgates are just... those kinds of floodgates are kind of meh. And number 5 would be Nibiru. So Infinite Imperm, why is this card kind of bad against this matchup? It's just because all the virtual world monsters, they activate in the hand, they get their effects on resolution also from that same hand effect. So Imperm does not disrupt it. Remember, Imperm these days, they typically use it just to either stop a Mechaba, or they stop a combo piece from going off. Crystron Haklifa Barex, I guess it's Solde. All these big cards are the ones getting negated because they have an activated effect that would generate advantage. This deck in particular doesn't really care because the body is the ends meet of the material. So there's nothing to stop them there, and there's no timing for you to stop their additional effect of searching, dumping, all those effects. They're just going to happen regardless. Oh, but Tombox, what about the VFD? Well, for the VFD... they can pop their own VFD with Chuche. Like the chain's gonna work like this. If they keep the trap card face up, or even if they set the trap card face down, they're gonna activate VFD. You're gonna chain Imperm, they'll pop their own VFD, and then you're gonna still be locked under. If they use Shen for the material, they have a 28 beat stick coming that's gonna be a Macrocosmos. You can't kill them, so you're gonna have to eat this play. If you're playing a combo deck, you don't have a strong back row to follow up against a no effect for the rest of the turn, then maybe you're gonna die. But if you're playing a control deck, you might buy enough time to play some of your trap cards like Ice Dragon's Prison to revive a card just to disrupt their board from being developed further. Then you'll stay alive. That's the best choice. But if they didn't have the Chuche, then yeah, go ahead, just use Imperm, stop the VFD, give yourself maybe a chance to play, but that's the only real part where it would be effective, or any other card from the extra deck would be the only choices for you to play the Imperm. The next card that isn't very good is Triple Tactics Talent. That card is just not very good. VFD's timing would be during the draw phase or standby phase, and any other effect, if you look at the extra deck, they don't really do anything. They have a continuous effect with Shen Shen, and everything else is kind of like, yeah, unless you're playing like Crystal Wing, then you can actually bait out a Crystal Wing and then use a Triple Tactics Talent, take control of whatever problem there is. Some people are playing also the Muddy Mud Dragon to go into Dragoon. Maybe you can take their Dragoon, but this Dragoon, remember, since there is no normal monster, it really can't do any pop, but it does offer an Omni Negate. But the Omni Negate could also even stop this particular card, so it's really kind of iffy. So you're banking on hand traps. If you are going first and you're banking on them activating hand trap, then this is your choice. This is your call by the grave. But if you're going second and you're dealing with a board that's already established, they're going to be missing a Gamma. So the only one that they can really hit you with is an Ash. That's really it. All the other hand traps are more or less ineffective otherwise. Number 3, Droll and Lockbird. This is a dice roll. This one's actually not that bad if you time it right, but then you don't know when you timed it right. If they start with a Pot of Desires, activate it. They draw 2 cards and they won't be able to use their Lulu, and they won't be able to use their Qinglong. But if they start off using those cards as like baits and they have a handful of monsters, they're going to build a full board, and your Drone Lockbird will have done squat. It's just nothing. It's garbage. So it's like roll the die. I hope I get a good hand, I guess. So rather than running something that's so 50-50, why don't you just actually run something that properly shuts them down? Cards number 4, Standard Floodgates. I'm talking about there can be only one Gozen match. In fact, most Floodgates that stay face up, there's a couple of exceptions. I will talk about the ones that are effective afterwards, but these ones don't work. There can be only one, and Gozen match, Rivalry. It's just that this deck runs 2 types. Of course, they run Psychics and Worms in the main deck, and the extra deck is just a mash of different kinds of monsters, ranging from machines to warriors. So if there can be only one, natural out, I would say is, so you have to use a Worm and you have to use a Psychic. You can go into Vermilion Mech and pop it, because that's a machine. All right, that works out. If you're stuck under Gozen or Rivalry, you need same type or attribute. They have a Virtual World Beast Juju that can send the card into the graveyard by banishing 2. That's another option. And if all else fails, they can overlay. They can overlay into something, swing, or go into Breaksword, pop it as well. That's also another option. But if any case, I believe Sky Thunder is also an option to send everything away once most things are broken. And even under, say, Anti-Spell Fragrance. If you're under Anti-Spell Fragrance, they can't activate their Kowloon. They can't activate the city. All right. Without the city, it's like a lot slower. But then they can go into one of those removals, get rid of it, and then just make the city anyway. Play the city, set up their board. Remember, they can set up during main phase too, which is why Floodgates are just really kind of meh, not that great. But it does slow them down. And then finally, Nibiru. Nibiru is just that if they go into Bamboozling, Gossip Shadow, and they respected that you might have Nibiru, then you're going to eat a VFD regardless. It's not stoppable if you're just relying on just one Nibiru to blow out the entire hand. And even if you hit them with Nibiru, if they're holding on to Lao Lao, they'll fall out with a Lao Lao. And once they fall out with a Lao Lao, you're still going to be under like a Macrocosmos, and it's just going to be very difficult to play. That's why like Dragon Link has such a difficult time, because they lose all their combo piece as they're making the combo, basically shutting down most of the lights and darks necessary to actually play the deck. Okay, now we're going to look into the cards that do work, and let's talk about the blowouts. And not everyone gets to run these blowout cards, but blowout number 0, it's going to be playing the Numeron stuff, going into Zexal. The cards all require activation. Now don't go into Megaclops. Megaclops isn't going to save you because this deck runs Xyz, but like just make a Zexal, and because they need all the activation from the Chuche to all the cards in their hand, the whole turn is basically skip once you successfully resolve a Zexal, and you can pretty much just snowball from there. Now the other ones would be getting full on banish effects going off on turn 1. If you play a Grand Maju deck, perhaps play like a D-Shifter, Macrocosmos, and even a Dark Law. It has to banish everything. That's key here, because if they're able to send spells and traps, they will be able to perhaps target a monster or target a spell or a trap that's already on the field, and then send the other missing type into the graveyard and get their special summon, build the board, break your board, put you under VFD. So it has to be everything. If they're unable to send a card into the graveyard, they do not get that special summon, effectively kind of putting them under like a Vanity's Fiend to some degree, and it just does not feel good for them. And if everything gets banished, they can't even use like the engrave effect of, you know, their virtual world gates Qinglong or their Chuche to boost level. So in other words, they just lose out on all resources, and that's exactly what you want. You want them to be unable to play. Now, speaking of that particular part, there's actually two weaknesses in that statement. The other one is that they have to send a card differing from the one that they targeted to the graveyard. If the target goes missing, and this is point number 2, if the target goes missing, then they can't send anything because there's nothing really to match it. It's just kind of like activating like a Black Whirlwind, trying to get an attack stat when the attack stat of the monster is completely missing. Same idea here. So if the card gets removed, so this is where face-up removal is very key here, they will not be able to send anything, and then the entire summon will get shut off because the conjunction will not have been met and they can't get that summon. It's pretty good, and especially when you do it to monsters like Lulu. Lulu is key here. You always want to hit the Lulu, and yeah, that's something that you always want to stop there. And the other thing that you should note is that face-up removal, you should try to time it correctly. Wait for them to activate something before you remove it. Say they activate the virtual world gate Chucha onto the field, like through the spell card of Kowloon, all right? They put it onto the field, they target it, use your Cosmic Cyclone and remove it. And I recommend Cosmic Cyclone over Twin Twister because they have too many grave effect. You don't want a Twin Twister the Qinglong into the graveyard because they'll get another search and then they'll just keep going. And also Ice Dragon's Prison is also super effective by getting rid of your opponent's monsters and banishing them away. Aside from like just banishing them, you can also revive it as tuners and make your own Halki Vibrax. It's just a fun thing to do with the Ice Dragon's Prison, but typically you want to be able to empty out their graveyard so that they cannot revive stuff with their Lao Lao. And if they're really putting stuff into the graveyard just for revival's sake, and maybe even take away their Nyan Nyan as well. But be careful when you get rid of the Nyan Nyan, because I believe Nyan Nyan does have an effect when it gets banished, and it will put some of the cards back. And speaking of the cards it can bring back, it can bring back stuff that were banished by Desires, because it doesn't care about the card typing at all. So, you know, just be careful with that. But face-up card removal, stuff like Dryden, I don't know, just Omni removals are super important. But if you put them under Buster Lock, on the other hand, that is great. And speaking of Buster Lock, card number 3, or card set number 3 would be Artifact Sanctum. Both Lancia and Scythe are effective options, and I actually recommend putting both of them in at the same time just so that you can have access to both, because just judge it by the timing. Because if you shotgun Lancia against them, a lot of them are playing Pot of Desires, and on top of the Pot of Desires they also play Qinglong for the additional search. Playing that one Lancia just shuts everything off. However, playing a Scythe against them turn off their extra deck, so they don't exactly have a board built. So both of them are effective, and if you drew into one of them, at least the Sanctum can go into the other and shut off the other side of the play, which is why both Artifact Lancia and Artifact Scythe are both effective. But Lancia is really only effective on the early turns. Outside of the early turns, it's not that great. But being able to stop like Qinglong, it kind of acts as like a pseudo prevent your opponent from setting up their Chuche, so it will block the one card pop, and it will also block them from searching out cards. That's really as much as I would go for the Lancia. Scythe is much more effective. And number 4, hand traps. There are effective hand traps against them. Remember, all the monsters, they send cards into the graveyard as a part of their effect. So Ash is always live, but who should you Ash? It depends on situation to situation, but ideally you want to Ash, say, the Lulu, because that's actually a double. You stop them from summoning out the Lulu, that's one thing, and you also stop them from adding a monster, ideally a Lao Lao. But you can't really guess on that part. You can also try to hit Lao Lao, because Lao Lao also acts as almost like 3 bodies. If there's already a Nyan Nyan in the graveyard and they're summoning out level 3, that's going to spawn 3 bodies, and that's another one that you can potentially negate. And you want to prevent that from happening. So it's going to be a bit hard for that one. Another really good hand trap will be Gamma, because Gamma destroys. Preventing the name from even landing on the field is just so essential. There's one floodgate that works against this deck very well, but it will get broken fairly quickly because it doesn't really stop them. Summon Limit. Summon Limit will block them. Once they put 2 monsters onto the field, the turn ends. Yeah, and they can't go into their extra deck. that hurts. But the problem is you have to be aware of Chuche. If they start off their play with the virtual world Kowloon, and then they put the Chuche onto the field, and then they start dropping stuff into the graveyard, they send like the spell, and then they send a trap, they'll be able to pop your summon limit and go off. That is the problem. So you have to time your summon limit correctly. Make sure that they kind of bypass it and lose their opportunity, or else it will be too late. That's why I would say timing is crucial. You have to wait for the right moment to actually maximize your counters, or else they're still going to be able to push through. And the whole point of this is to prevent development. All of their monsters in hand, they have, you know, a once per turn clause, and being able to block them from being summoned out, especially some key ones that just generate tons of advantage, can be your saving grace. All right. So prevent the board development, and that is actually the best way to actually counter this deck. And like most of my losses come from people preventing me from getting that development and eventually putting me into a top decking situation. Virtual World cannot win in top decking if the board isn't already developed. It is just a fact, because they rely on so many cards. Qinglong's not going to save you. Like, they need another name on the field to actually get their effects going. So if they're top decking, the game's over. Now, if you're one of those decks that can run Aezu Sky Thunder, I highly recommend burning most of your opponent's effects, make the Aezu Sky Thunder, send everything to the graveyard, and hope that they're in a top decking situation. If they don't have a Qinglong already in the graveyard, rebuilding that board with a couple of cards in their hand while dealing with the Aezu Sky Thunder is going to end the game for them. That is one of the forms of board wipe that I would say is very successful. The other form, maybe you can use Evenly Match. That's a really big maybe. If they leave Chuche on the field, they're still going to pop your cards, and Shen's still going to be in the graveyard. Now, that's all I got for this video, guys. If you guys enjoyed this video, learned a thing or two, smash that thumbs up button. If you guys want to see more stuff from MST.TV, or maybe there's something that you want to add, well, leave it down in the comment section below. Share your knowledge with us. I would like to learn more about this matchup as well. So yeah, leave it down there, and don't forget to hit the notification bell if you guys do hit the subscribe button. And that is all I got for this one. So I'll see you guys in the next one.